In this first chapter, we're going to talk about just some basics of personal finance. In this case, we're going to start off with some definitions and talk about what a plan is, or what are its parts, if you will. So, some definitions. Personal finance is the process of planning for spending, financing, and investing in an optimal way. And of course, optimal is the key term here, right? We need to try to find the best way to do what it is we want to do financially. And there's more than one path to the correct ending or to the desired ending. Of course, a personal financial plan is that actual plan. And one of the things we'll talk about over the next couple of chapters is that for a plan to actually be, in quotes, a plan, it does have to be written, right? We need to have some specific goals that have been written down, goals that are attainable, that we can assess whether or not those goals can actually be achieved. Another important topic is something called opportunity cost. And an opportunity cost, quite simply, is if you do X, what do you give up? That is, you could do X or Y. If you choose X, that means you give up something with respect to asset Y, for instance. And what does that cost you? What is the difference in cost? So if you do X, you gain 3, but if you did Y, you'd gain 2. So by doing 3 instead of 1, the thing that you give up is you give up 2 points, right? You give up 2. So the ultimate gain then is just 1. So again, the opportunity cost is what you give up as the result of a decision. So how do you benefit from the understanding of finance? So what we're going to be talking about through here is we're going to talk about making your own financial decisions, right? Every spending decision has an opportunity cost. We need to be able to evaluate what that is. We need to be able to judge the advice of financial advisors, right? We want to make informed decisions, and of course we may need professionals to help us do that. However, we need to have enough basic knowledge, and that's really what this course is all about, is providing you with some basic knowledge so that when you receive some advice, you will be able to make some decisions, if you will, about the accuracy of the information, or the your ability just to ask the right questions, right? You need to have some basic knowledge to understand what questions you need to ask. And then when the questions are answered, to evaluate whether those answers make any sense. And so in the end, another question we may have, obviously at the bottom here, is maybe it is you want to become a financial advisor. So what career opportunities are available? And I would think that there are many opportunities in the financial world, especially in the financial services world, for individuals to find great careers. So the components of a financial plan really talk about 6 general aspects of life, if you will. We need to talk about budgeting and tax planning. We need to know something about managing liquidity, right? Managing your money. We need to talk about how we finance large projects. We need to talk about how we protect ourselves. We need to protect our assets and our income. This obviously is insurance. Next, we'll have to talk a little bit about investing. And in the end, although they seem a little bit different, they are similar topics. We need to talk about planning for retirement and for estates. So in the end, retirement is all about planning for money that you need in the future. And an estate is, what do you do with that accumulation of wealth as you pass from this world to the next? So let's talk about budgeting and tax planning. So the process of forecasting future expense and savings is not the easiest thing to do. But we need to have some basis, some way to try to figure out, how do we get from point A to point B? So the first step we would want to do is we want to evaluate our own current financial position. What assets do you already own? Who do you owe money to? And in the end, we have a definition of something called net worth. Net worth is the difference between what you own minus the value of what you owe. From a business context, we might refer to this as ownership or equity. Liquidity talks about your access to funds to cover any short-term cash deficiencies. And this whole process of understanding liquidity leads to money management and credit management. Money management talks about how much money we need to retain and how to allocate funds for that. So how do we manage the cash that we have? And then the credit management decision talks about, if we need more cash, how do we go about getting that cash? Where does it come from? If it doesn't come from our salaries, it must come from somewhere else. So credit management is all about the process of gathering funds for a person. This is in the form of, obviously, some form of a loan. Loans often lead for large expenditures. We need college tuition, cars, houses. So how do you manage loans, right? So we have some questions. How much can you afford to borrow? What should the maturity of the loan be? How do you select the loan, right? What's that process? The challenge with financial services and financial planning in general is we typically don't have many mentors, if you will, to look to tell us how to do things, right? How do you know how to borrow money? Well, typically, your folks don't take you to the bank when they go to borrow money because it's their money, it's not your money, right? So how do you learn how to do this? And this is a part of the process of learning about financial services, is to understand this process so that in the end, we make better decisions. Insurance planning, obviously we need to protect things, right? So what is it that we need to protect, right? So obviously you want to protect the assets that you're buying. So you need to have protection for automobiles and homeowners. We need health insurance to help us with any potential medical expenses. And then in the end, we need disability and or life insurance to help protect our income. And this is, when we get to these chapters, this is something we'll talk about, right? Life insurance, right? You can't protect your life. What you're trying to do is protect the income that your family has become accustomed to. So we want to make sure that if something bad should happen to you, that your family will not be tossed into financial problems if you should happen to pass or lose your ability to make money. Investing, obviously, we have to talk about a plan for that. So anything that we need above and beyond our maintenance of liquidity, right, paying for our current bills, etc., we have to have a process for this. We need to have a plan. So we need to have, what is the objective that we want? It might be to earn a high rate of return. However, there are other objectives that are just as good as earning high returns. So what kind of investments can we put our money into? Stocks, bonds, mutual funds. There are a number of different assets that are available to individuals to help them to achieve their investment goals. Now, the underlying element to all of this is risk. And risk is everywhere. Everywhere in the financial services industry, in the products that are provided, in the plans that are created. Uncertainty is everywhere because we are trying to predict what we will think will happen in the future. And of course, nobody knows what's going to happen. But we do have to have a plan to take care of some of those potentially bad things that could happen to us. And of course, we need to manage our investments so that we take into account the risk that's involved. We want to, they use something called risk tolerance. We have to be willing to create a plan of investing that will keep us happy within some level of tolerance, if you will, with respect to risk. Sometimes what you'll hear people say is, we want to make sure you can sleep at night. What that means is you have a financial plan that is providing you with a level of comfort. You're within your risk tolerance area that will make you happy and allow you to sleep comfortably. Then we have to talk about planning for retirement and estate planning. Insurance planning is part of this. They're connected, right? So obviously we want to talk about how can we protect the assets and things we have from losing value. The reason we want to protect those things is so that they're available for retirement use and or for estate planning. So obviously retirement planning is all about what happens from the time we quit working till the time we pass. And then estate planning is what happens to the stuff that's remaining when you pass. Who gets those assets? How is it distributed? So we need to understand something about building our own financial plan. We want to concentrate on enhancing our net worth. We want to build on our wealth. And all the components of this plan have an impact on your cash inflow and outflows and how much cash you have now. You may have to give up some cash today in order to have safety, in order to have a better feeling later on in life. So how do these decisions affect your plans? Well, cash inflows are obviously the cash received. Outflows are the cash you spend. We want to budget the balances between the income that's coming in and the spending that goes out. Liquidity obviously deals with the cash excesses and or shortages. So this is how the plan is managed. It's the operational aspect, right? This is really sort of like running the business of your life. We need to understand what inflows come in, what outflows go out. We need to budget those things so we have some control, so we understand what happens to those funds over time. And of course, this all deals with liquidity. So for the course, what we're going to do is part one of the course is all about the tools. We're going to talk about budgeting, right? How much should you work this week? If your employer allowed some flexibility, how much should you work this week? Well, you want to work so you have enough money to buy all the things that you want and need. So the budgeting decisions we talk about how much you spend and the amount of cash outflows each month, right? So what things do you need to buy? What are the things that you're going to be able to buy today that will last till tomorrow? part 2, we'll talk about managing liquidity. If you have extra cash, what do you do with that cash? If you have a cash deficiency, right? Where should the money come from to cover this deficiency? How much credit should we have in order to cover these things, right? I mean, debt is the loans that you already have. Credit is your ability to get money from somewhere else. So managing liquidity is all about, again, the management of this cash that we have every month. When we talk about financing, we're going to talk about, should you lease a car? Should you borrow money for a car? How much cash are you going to need to borrow? How long a period are you going to borrow it from? What's the ideal source for you to get these funds? The fourth component of this is, how do you protect your wealth? How do you protect the assets that you've been able to acquire and plan for the future? So this has to do about insurance, right? How do you purchase to protect your assets, and how much or what kind of insurance should you purchase to protect your income? Personal investing, right? There's a whole section on if you have extra cash outside of what you need to just buy your bills, etc., where should that money go, right? How much risk should you be willing to take? And again, as you see, there's a variety of conditions and opportunities. They all fill in the blanks as we go through this course. And then the sixth part of this course is all about retirement and estate planning, right? So we're going to plan for life as we know it right now, but we also have to have plans for what's going to happen in the future. And as I mentioned earlier, there's risk involved, because we need to understand that the choices we make today are about the things we think will happen tomorrow. And since we don't know what those things are, there's always a risk. There's a chance we'll be wrong. There's a chance that we invest too much money, that we have too much money when we get to retirement. I don't think anybody would be too concerned about that. But what people would be concerned about is, what if I don't have enough money when I get to retirement? Those are the things that we want to forecast, so we have a good idea, and we want to try to minimize the downside. So how do these things all fit together? Budgeting leads to liquidity. Liquidity leads to financing issues. Financing decisions are correlated with insurance decisions. Those insurance decisions fall into play with investment decisions. Investment decisions affect retirement planning, and retirement planning and estate planning decisions, they all come back to your budgeting decisions. So this is a huge circle that we're going to make, and how all of these parts are integrated. So that is the first section of this chapter 1 on the overview of financial planning.